question of ancestral lineage, of trauma and trauma bonds moving through physical bloodlines and families and past lives. The work that anyone does at any particular time helps to heal it, as if the domino effect of where you flick the domino over, it rolls backwards and forwards. So moving forward in time to clear energy ties and also moving back. This is what is known as the multiverse of healing, but there are many layers to this because there's never one thing in particular that is held within the ancestral line. You see, if you take one physical human being and you try to resolve some of the issues or the understanding that you have, so understanding on one level of one issue, and then once you uncover that particular issue, as in having an understanding of it, then there is always going to be another deeper layer. So it's never that the actual one issue is just wiped clear, the slate is clean as such, and an understanding. Trying to help to understand this, but it is that whatever is released in the family, let's do this. Okay. Say, for instance, as you are female and you're asking this question, say, for instance, if there was in your family, and there are many that Anne has worked with, and we're using her imagery now of her mind, if there was somebody that stepped forward and an individual had experienced domestic violence, if that particular person moves through that and looks through in this lifetime of healing themselves and looking at why this possibly has happened, looked at many avenues and many sides to this situation, they may clear that level of understanding in themselves, as in, how did this happen and what did they learn from it from themselves to progress? And not that anyone in particular is deserving of any violence, emotional, physical, psychological at all. But suppose that individual moves through that and has an understanding that this is a repeating pattern going back to, say, their mother, and then following the trail to their grandmother and following all the way back as ancestral bloodlines, the lineage. And then having another understanding that there could be a past life attached to this. Well, once there is an understanding of this from the individual that may show up today, of having that exploration of why this has happened or some repeating pattern, that's one level of understanding. But once that level of understanding of that individual, then there could be much more or many more other levels of understanding. It uncovers them, it unravels like a ball of wool. There are possibly many more other issues or examples or lessons that the individual soul travels through. So it's more in depth, but yes, the understanding will move through the bloodline, the lineage, the ancestrals. It will move through this. Say, for instance, Anne had a client today that we are aware of, and her fearfulness of how she moves forward in life, this fear of losing her property and money. Now, her grandmother stepped forward today to discuss this through Anne and her granddaughter. And there was great conversation on it was a repeating pattern of fear through each of the women going back in life. Now, so this woman today is fearful of losing her house. She has an understanding that possibly it comes further back. But the lesson which came up today, which was unusual, she said, or was not expecting the answer, this client who sits in front of her. But Anne channeled the grandmother, and the grandmother said, you have been missing home or love or a partner or family, but it resides within you. And of course, it was more in depth than this. The client sat there and then realized what she thought was the fear, as in ancestral, linking back through female family members. That actually, what it was that the family needed to learn, and these other women, was actually to feel safe, was to feel home in their heart. It was more to do with this rather than the bricks and mortar. The moment this client tuned into this and felt it in her physical body of these emotions in her chest, that was the healing part that rippled through the family. She had to have a greater understanding of what it actually meant. What was the reason behind the fear? But each family member had to unpick what was going on for them at the time. The grandmother was best pleased because it healed something also that was affecting the grandmother, and she let out a sigh of relief in a sense that she also, that part of her, that essence of her soul, also was allowed to breathe gently again, because this was her issue too, about learning that love and family was all in the heart of feeling safe, not that it was about the bricks and mortar of losing a house, but that was the ripple effect of the fear in the family going back. And of course, there was a past life there too. You see, there are repeating patterns that move through past lives and your ancestors that helps your soul to understand more. But today, in just a couple of moments, this individual, she let out a huge sigh. This was the granddaughter sitting opposite Anne, and also the grandmother that stepped forward. In spirit, they both sighed together, and they both wept together. And so, because of the understanding, there was a release of energy, and no longer a repeating cycle. Which means, as this woman, her client, moves forward, that it will no longer exist, this ancestral issue trauma. We hope that answers your question.